So one thing I wanted to chat to you about, given that we've been doing this show for now, 5 or 6 years, is just your perception on how or if punting on the EFL has changed in the last, let's say, 1 to 3, 4 years. Is there anything major that's happened that's had to make you change the way you approach things, or that you've just noticed that the way that games are being priced up, or anything like that?
So I think the first thing we need to mention is what we call the early market, so the non-day of game market, betting anything before day of game, and how both the quality of the pricing and the limits, i.e. the amount you can get on, has changed. So there used to be, when I priced for a week in advance, I might have found 8 to 10 prices that I thought by game day would be much different. That's just not the case now. That's not to say there aren't any bets anymore, but I'll give an example. Tranmere play at home to Cheltenham tomorrow evening, Friday evening, and they open 13 to 10 on Sunday for that game. Like, this is going to go off evens, if not odds on. So if we'd recorded the pod on Monday morning, my nap would have been Tranmere at 13 to 10. They're now even money. It's been knocked into shape pretty quickly, and that's pretty much what I make it. Maybe a pinch of value still, but not enough to have a bet at that price. So today, Tranmere don't even get a mention for me on the pod if it hadn't been for this segment, because that price has now gone. There used to be 8 to 10 of those a week. There no longer are, because the early market is now looking at all of the data points that professional punters were looking at solely themselves 6, 7, 8 years ago. On top of that, both the Asian firms and the UK firms have realised that the hardest time for them to win money is earlier in the week, whereas on game day they get a lot more recreational money, and the market's a lot stronger, so they're happy with the bets they take, happy with the prices they're laying on game day. So they're not willing to take as big a bet early in the week as well. So it's a double whammy. There aren't as many good bets available early in the week, and the ones there are, you can't get as much money on early in the week. So to get enough turnover to make this, make a living from this now, you have to bet a lot more on the day of the game, and that's when the market is at its hardest. That's when at 9 in the morning on game day, someone out there knows some team news that you don't. Because a player might have been told the 11, and that gets through to a few people, but it doesn't get back to you. So you're not even playing in a level playing field on game day morning from about 9 to 2. You've got to be very careful that someone hasn't got more information than you've got. It's hard enough to win at this game as it is, without playing at times when someone knows more than you do. So yes, so the data is being used to, I want to say overkill, but it's maximum level now, it feels. And if you want to get an edge or a handle on the market using data, you need to be using it in a way that others aren't. So you've got to use your data more smartly. Take the raw data and do something perhaps unique with it. An example will be the Leeds Nap. Are you filtering out those lunchtime games because you're of a view that this 3 o'clock game is different, and so that entitles you to bet Leeds on a big handicap this week that the data might say leave on a full subset of the games? Are you making good adjustments for injuries and knowing how much a key player's worth when he's not playing? Are you making adjustments for midweek games and fatigue? Managers who are good back-to-back and managers who like a full week off to prepare? Is the data as relevant after a big break? Like after international break, there's a 2-week gap. Is what happened 2 weeks ago, in the last game, as relevant as it would have been if it played Tuesday, Saturday, and it's much closer? We have a case study of this weekend. Barrow play at home to Chesterfield. Barrow have just had in the last 7 days 2 back-to-back away trips to Wimbledon and Port Vale. Got a brilliant 4 points from those 2 away games. Chesterfield have had the whole week off and are rested for this. So are Barrow an upgrade because they're buoyant, having got 2 brilliant results, or are they a downgrade for tired legs? They've played 2 big away games, long journeys. Everywhere's a long journey for Barrow. 2 long journeys and 2 90 minutes against a team that have had a full week off. And Chesterfield are in real last chance saloon here. It's win or bust for their playoff chances. So their season's on the line. So how do you adjust for those 2 things? Barrow, whose season pretty much is over, they're one of those teams we talked about like Swansea, who are could now coast towards the end of the season if they wanted to. They blatantly aren't, because they've just gone to 2 teams in a promotion battle and taken 4 points. Whereas Chesterfield, who it's shit or bust, for want of a better expression, for them this week. So how do you make your adjustments outside of the data?
And do you see a game like that, as you've identified it, as you've explained it? Do you see a game like that as an opportunity because you think there's kind of more variables at play, that the prices are going to be, they're going to be, find it difficult to be absolutely spot on compared to some other games where there's more knowns? And if so, how do you decide what you think is important? How do you decide, you have to take a view of what's important and what isn't important? And do you base that on, is that instinct? Is that experience? Is that, is there models for that?
Yeah, so on the first part of your question of do I see this as a opportunity, I think you have to now, because if you're purely just playing off data that everyone else is doing, it's very, very hard to find an edge. You've got to be doing something beyond the data. So looking for opportunities like that where you can make adjustments, but it's not, you can't just be purely instinct. You can't just stick your finger in the air and say Barrow's tired legs here means they're a quarter of a goal worse than they would be normally for this game, without anything to back it up. So you've got to go back into history books and look at examples of where this has happened before, both in general, so for a large sample size, and to this team in general, and to this manager in general, and then try to make an adjustment based on both the data you have available to you, the history, the work you've done on past situations like this, and try to find some sort of edge that maybe isn't in the market without it being any sort of guess, if you can. So there are things that I do, and spreadsheets that I've built for myself that as a reference point for certain situations that I can use and feel comfortable using that information to make my price alterations, which I appreciate is tricky for a more recreational punter to be able to do.
Yeah, I miss the early days of the betting show where it felt like something as simple as knowing a team's XG ratio over the last 6 or 8 games, and then comparing. You'd often see big discrepancies if that's what was leading you, whereas now, you can basically predict what the price is going to be based on knowing the XG ratio. And I know that the models will be way more advanced than that, but sometimes it does feel as simple as that, and it does mean that you get these funny situations, as I see it, where if you're chatting with a more recreational punter maybe who doesn't know the underlying numbers, and I'll get WhatsApps from mates on a Saturday being like, hold on, why are the team that are second in League One such a big price to beat the team 14th in League One at home this weekend? And I'm like, the performance data.
It's not the league table at all anymore, is it? So that's there's more and more of those confusing ones for people not looking at data. But I think so anything where you can find a little edge in, whether it be like style matchups. So 2 teams playing each other today who have very clear styles of play. Can you look back and find where that team has played other sides playing in a very similar style or against the same formation, and filter out other games that aren't relevant to this one? And maybe then you find something in that data that isn't in the whole sample size.